You are welcome here just as you are. Your thoughts are welcome. Your doubts are welcome. We believe God is here ready to engage with you. Whether you use the word God or divine presence or source of love or creator or higher power, or you're not really sure what to say, you are welcome here.
Over these 7 weeks, we are gathering to explore God. So today, the question that we'll talk about, ask each other, and work with each other about is Christianity too narrow? And the question comes because increasingly Christianity is seen or represented in our culture as narrow and bigoted and mostly an irrelevant belief system. So between county clerks refusing to do their jobs and political candidates who do not respect the separation of church and state, or the 6th article of the Constitution of the United States that forbids a religious test as a requirement for holding governmental office, is it any wonder in this day and time that people look at Christianity not only as narrow, but narrowing? What are we saying about Christianity to the world? And it sure seems like that even amongst Christians, we can't even agree on the way. So let's hear first what some other people think about Christianity in this first video, if you would now.
I think I'd be ignorant to say that Christianity is the only right religion. I don't know what the right religion is. It's just what I believe it is.
I know different religions, have their different belief systems, but I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to being one God, no matter what, over all of us, even though people put it in different, terms and languages, etc., etc.
Some people they need religion, they need Jesus, and they need something to believe in. And my response would just be good for you.
I think religion's a double-edged sword. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad that can come out of it. And I'm not sure if it's from religion that the bad or the good comes out of it, or whether it's the people.
La cristianidad es muy importante porque podemos aprender valores cristianos donde donde descubrimos más acerca de nosotros.
These days, I think too much religion is based around money when money has nothing to do with God. What the hell does God need money for?
The fundamentals of Christianity, like the values that are taught, are important, and they all serve positive purposes.
Some people that I've met, I've had friends, and the minute they find out about me, or the minute that I do anything that doesn't follow their religion, they don't want anything to do with me.
There are many ways as there are people in the world to God. Each person has their own path.
My view on anyone who claims to have a monopoly on truth is that, there's no one truth about anything. I think that a lot of religions say the same thing in different ways.
I respect a lot of faiths, and I think that Christianity is a pillar that's influenced by the other great religions in the world.
I think that a lot of it is intolerant, and I think a lot of the intolerant Christianity is used as a battering ram to try to either create or go back to something that doesn't exist anymore.
I think that people tend to confuse the word religion with Christianity and what the Bible actually says.
I think there's some wonderful teachings in Christianity and wonderful sayings. And I find that there are many, whether it's priests or whatever Christian religion, people who are really spiritual. But unfortunately, I find them the exception, not the rule. And I think, again, it becomes more enforcing a set of values rather than exploring truth with other people. It's trying to tell people what to believe rather than helping them find it.
We believe that our full participation and interaction with each other helps us connect both with the divine and with each other. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves to each other and talk about this question. What do you think about the statistic that nearly half of all U.S. adults believe it doesn't matter what religious faith you follow because they all teach the same lessons?
In my generation, I was very fortunate to meet the Reverend who became the Reverend Elder Troy Perry, who was the moderator of this, as this became a denomination, Metropolitan Community Churches. And got to know him personally. And I served in the Metropolitan Community Church of Dallas, which was the forerunner of what is now the Cathedral of Hope and of this church when the cathedral separated from the MCC denomination. Our roots are very deep, and there was a day, I was about between 18 and 19 years old when this church started, and like many of you, I came to it some years into it. I was about in my late 20s when I first found Metropolitan Community Church, and then came to Dallas on a visit and went to the original MCC at Reagan and Brown Street. And I think there's a few of us from that generation. I came into the life of this church in 1980, 81, and worked through my process and my ordination by the mid-80s. And then I was the interim pastor between the Reverend Elder Don Eastman, who was pastoring the MCC at that time, and the pastor that came and formed COH, which was Reverend Michael Piazza. So I have a long, long history with the church, and I've been in MCC for around 40 years. And I have to tell you, at that time in my life, I think like most of you, I was searching. It was the 70s. You know, there was a whole lot going on in the 70s, but there was not a lot of places you could go as a gay person and be safe. And even the first times that I went to the church in Dallas, there were still police taking license plates numbers in the parking lots and scaring people. And most people would not sign any kind of piece of paper that went around through the church, let alone always declare their membership in the organization, because they were afraid, because those things could be taken by the police and people could be harassed and discriminated against even more so than what was happening at the time. The church and the work of Troy Perry began to change all of that. And across the country, churches began to form and take shape and become the heart of many communities, which is still true today. MCC ultimately spread around the world. And in today's time, churches like this dot the U.S., but some of the great work is going on in other countries of MCC. The message that God loves you and accepts you and made you, and you are who you are, and that's acceptable to God. That is still a relevant message in all times, and is the foundation for the fact that you and I can be here today and enjoy the freedom that we have today. And the MCC, Metropolitan Community Churches, have been one of the primary entities that has spread that good news for all these years, for more than 45 years. We've put that out there, and many people came before us, and hopefully many people will come after us, because I think this is still a message that will need to resonate with the rest of the world, at least in the indefinitely. And despite the advances we've made in laws, as you still know, we alluded to it, there are still places where people don't follow the law. And the law doesn't fully protect you. The law doesn't necessarily help you to know that you're okay. It can make you legal for certain activities, but there's still a lot of work to do, such as you and I could be fired from our jobs for being gay, and that is still on the books in most places in this country. Yeah. So there's still a lot of work to do, and the church is still central to that. And this church formed as the Cathedral of Hope and MCC went through a separation. MCC of Greater Dallas became the legacy that sustained MCC, Metropolitan Community Churches, in Dallas and in this region, and joined with the other regional churches in other cities and towns around here. So we've been, I think that we have been here since 2003, if memory serves me well. And a few months into that, I know I went to a service, and Reverend Cindy Love was the temporary pastor at that time. And so she welcomed me and needed some help, and I've been here since. And then as our pastor came in to it, she kind of inherited me. So Reverend Colleen Dara, and we have worked together since. I don't get to put as much time in now as I would like to do, but I give what I can, and I think that that's what we all do and all need to do. So a little bit of my history intertwined with our history, but that is the way that we are. We are a community. We are not just a place that we come and visit. You and I, we are all community because we are all connected, in this church helps do that, helps connect us to each other and to the greater community in which we live and work and be, and in fact, as it joins our hands with hands around the world. So in that vein, let's just take a moment to be still for a moment, and then I'll offer a prayer. Let's just give thanks for what we know as Metropolitan Community Church. God of many names, and God who we know by these many names and can connect to, and that you bring us into your presence by the power of your Spirit. We are grateful people this day that you brought us together. You united us in this way that we call Metropolitan Community Church. You helped to make this country look at us and see the truth. Look at us and see the way. Look at us and see Jesus in this world. Thank you that you've brought us this far. Thank you that you've brought us together in this particular place and time and in this community. Help us to continue to connect with those around the world who call themselves Metropolitan Community Church. Help us always to be part of the force for good in this world, for change in this world, for love in this world. Sustain us as you have these many years. And I ask your blessing on each person here and on this church and on this denomination known as Metropolitan Community Churches. And in all the ways we know you, in all the ways that we feel your presence and are connected with you, we give our thanks through Jesus Christ. And together we'd all say, Amen and Amen.
Our first reading comes from Acts. While Paul waited for them in Athens, he was deeply distressed to find that the city was flooded with idols. He began to interact with the Jews and the Gentile God worshippers in the synagogue. He also addressed whomever happened to be in the marketplace each day. Certain Epicurean and Stoic philosophers engaged him in discussions, too. Some said, "What an amateur! What is he trying to say?" Others remarked, "He seems to be a proclaimer of foreign gods." They said this because he was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. They took him into custody and brought him to the council on Mars Hill. "What is this new teaching? Can we learn what you are talking about? You've told us some strange things, and we want to know what they mean." They said this because all the Athenians, and as well as the foreigners who lived in Athens, used to spend their time doing nothing but talking about or listening to the newest thing. Paul stood up in the middle of the council on Mars Hill and said, "People of Athens, I see that you are very religious in every way. As I was walking through the town and carefully observing your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' What you worship as unknown, I now proclaim to you." When they heard about the resurrection from the dead, some began to ridicule Paul. However, others said, "We will hear from you about this again."
Dear friends, let's love each other, because love is from God, and everyone who loves is born from God and knows God. The person who doesn't love does not know God, because God is love. We have known and have believed the love that God has for us. God is love. And those who remain in love remain in God, and God remains in them. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear expects punishment. The person who is afraid has not been made perfect in love. We love because God first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, and hates a brother or sister, he is a liar. Because the person who doesn't love a brother or sister who can be seen can't love God, who can't be seen. This commandment we have from him. Those who claim to love God ought to love their brother and sister also.
Have you ever felt misunderstood when you talked about your faith? Paul did. Have you ever felt like people were looking at you as if you had two heads when you talked about the importance of worship? When the early church talked about communion, people thought Christians were cannibals, literally, because they were eating the body and drinking the blood of Christ. It is hard for us to misunderstand or to be misunderstood. Likewise, it's easy for believers to miss the point of their faith. Maybe you've had Christians tell you what to believe, or more than show you the way of love. You felt judged, excluded. Then again, maybe you were that Christian. We say that MCC is an inclusive church. Is Christianity, by its definition, exclusive? Let's hear what some others have to say on today's question. Is Christianity too narrow?
If I am saying something and I feel like that I have misspoken or said something in a way that I want to...
Posted all over the internet.
Yeah, In-N-Out's gonna be served in heaven, bro.
Yeah.
Ron.
Yeah, you know, I think that one of the hardest things living in a society like ours is that there is such diversity, and there's so many different beliefs and so many different religions around us that it's very difficult for us to imagine that any one of these religions, whether it be Christianity or Islam or any worldview really, would claim to have the market on the truth. A couple years ago, I was influenced by an author and a man who was a missionary in India, and his name was Leslie Newbigin. And he told this parable. There's an old story in India about a king and an elephant. And a king had an elephant, and he wanted to do an experiment. And so he brought in 6 blind men, and he asked them to tell him what the elephant was. And so the blind men, of course, began to feel around, and the first one felt the elephant and the side of the elephant and said, oh, it's a wall. And another man felt the trunk and said, it's a snake. And the other man felt the foot and said, it's a tree. And you get the point. He felt the ear. It was a fan. And so, of course, the point of the story is, and people often tell this in India, and it's become a popular story in our society as well, that the blind men are like the various religions of the world. None of them see the elephant in whole, but they're all basically describing the same thing with different angles, but not one of them could ever say that they have the full knowledge of the elephant. Here's the problem with that, and I was really helped by this, because what this man, Leslie Newbigin, said is the only way that anyone can ever come to that conclusion is if you are in the position of the king. The only way that you can ever say that each of the individual blind men only have part of the truth is if you are the king and you are looking down and seeing the whole picture, seeing the whole elephant, and are able to judge each of the blind men accordingly. And so the application to our time is this, is that I think when people say all religions are basically the same, that sounds really tolerant and it sounds really humble. But in reality, it's kind of an arrogant claim. It's sort of like saying you're in the position of the king, that you can see the whole picture and that each of the religions can only see a part of it. When it comes down to it, I think what I've realized is that we're all exclusivists. All of us are making exclusive claims, whether you say that God is a Trinity, like we say in Christianity, or whether you say God is one, the way they do in Islam or Judaism, or if you say God is many, the way they do in Hinduism, or if you say there is no God, as you do in secular humanism, or you say that all gods are basically the same, which is basically progressive, sort of progressive self-made American religion. In every single case, you are making an exclusive truth claim that has the potential to exclude. You're making a statement about ultimate reality. So I think one of the best ways to do it is just to admit the ways that you're exclusive, to admit that yes, the Christian religion does say that Jesus Christ is the only Savior and Lord. And let's just take all of our exclusive views and put them out on the table and have an honest debate about them. I think that's a lot more honest than saying that all religions are the same.
We think that narrow means intolerant, right? And intolerance somehow is the cardinal sin of our world, right? If you're playing a guitar, I mean, how many G's are there? How many notes? How many ways can you play a G? There's one way to play a G. You're either on key or off key. Is that intolerant? Is that narrow? Is that unfair? No, it's beautiful. There's a way to play this note. It's beautiful. The step back is like, well, what's wrong with that, right? And narrow in what way, right? Narrow in the way of being clear, in being concise, in being decisive, in being attainable, right? Right? Yeah, in that sense, absolutely. But isn't that a good narrow? Like, aren't these good things? That like, it's not like I'm shooting up, I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that one of them sticks. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's broad, right? But come on now, like, who's trying to live like that? That you just toss up stuff and hope that something stays on there? Like, nah, man, like, tell me the bullseye, Tell me the target. How do I fix this? How was man made right with God? I'm gonna be like, well, I ain't figured it out. Oh, no, I won't. Who has? Nobody's figured it out, right? No, I need you to tell me. How do we get this? So in my mind, I'm like, man, why is narrow bad? Narrow's, in a lot of contexts, good, right? Doesn't mean it lacks grace, doesn't mean it lacks love. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite.
I like the phrase that truth is narrow. It narrows your options, but grace is as wide. So you've got to hold to the narrowness of truth and the width of grace. And it's a tension you play between the two. That's how kind of Jesus lived. He was full of grace and truth. And he holds that paradox in himself. He says that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by means of me. Well, that's pretty narrow of you, Jesus. You're not being very embracing of other people's opinions. Well, he's also extremely gracious, and he's provided for us in a profound way. I mean, he saves us through his own life and death and resurrection and his return. We are caught up into his life. I mean, I'm held by that. He was very irreligious, and I kind of like him for that, because I don't like religion very much, and I don't think he did. Religion seeks to kind of control. Often it happens as a dilemma, because initially the revelation of God is given to the human being, or to a nation in the case of Israel. And then what they have to do to kind of hand it on to the next generation is to
create some codes and rituals and ideas and things to try and pass that experience on meaningfully to the next generation. It's a dilemma. The very act of actually encoding the religion is the thing that kills it in the long run and actually makes people kind of nasty, because people get over-attached to the religion itself and lose what the religion is meant to point towards. And so religions, including Christianity, have always got to renew, go back to the originating encounter with God. So all renewal movements are returning to God, rediscovering what was given there and rediscovering God, and then going out again. And that's why we maintain a rich relationship with God, because without that we become religious people, nasty, dangerous, don't understand grace, don't understand the grace that they themselves have received and don't offer it to other people, which really is not exactly what we're meant to be living like.
I think a lot of people struggle to believe because some Christians make it incredible. Take away the possibility of making the faith beautiful and winsome, incredible because of the way that we live and the things that we do. Now, there is something funny about that and a little ironic. So Christians are hypocrites. Okay. Yes, I am a hypocrite. Can I just say that? I'm a hypocrite. Many of the things that I say that I espouse to believe, I don't live. And I know actually lots of people who aren't Christians who live better lives than I do. One of my closest friends is a Sikh, and he is a much more disciplined, much more self-controlled person than I am. But see, the funny thing about Christianity is that hypocrisy actually does not undermine the credibility of the Christian faith, because in some ways, hypocrisy is necessary. Because what is required to be a Christian is not that you're good and moral and squeaky clean and have nothing wrong with you. The first thing that is actually required to become a Christian is that you admit that you're jacked up and you need help. That's like the only thing that's required, is that you know that you are so messed up that you need grace. So in some sort of weird, kind of ironic way, it requires people who are messed up. It requires people who know that their lives are not put together. So this is why when you go into a church, you find a bunch of people who are hypocrites, because we are. All of us are. We're all broken. We're all messed up. And now that doesn't excuse Christians doing and saying stupid things by any means. But what I'm saying is that the stupidity of Christians does not discredit the reality of the Christian faith. If anything, it points to how important and necessary Jesus is. Because Jesus is there not to make squeaky clean moral people. Jesus is there to save broken, messed up people, of which the church is full of them. Yeah, that's what I'd say to that.
Please turn to those around you in groups of twos or threes and share together for a few minutes about that question. What exclusive claims do you hold? Do you allow yourself to be vulnerable when discussing your views with others? Take some time now. I remember that story in a different context. It has something to do with perception. The moral of that story was that we all perceive life differently because it is based on who we are and our experiences that we have had. In the video today, it illustrated the world's religions have a different view of what is the religious truth. The Muslims and the Buddhists have theirs. We as Christians have our own. Even within the various religions, there are different parts or different sects with their version of the truth. And so this Sunday, we are celebrating our denomination's 47th anniversary. 47 years ago, we started out as a church of the excluded. And here we are today, a church that is welcoming to all people of all faiths. As you continue to ponder whether or not Christianity is narrow, I would like to propose a couple of questions to you, or ideas to you. When we speak of Christianity, are we speaking of the religion, or are we speaking of the love? If we are speaking of the religion, then one can say Christianity is narrow. For as a religion, we have formed rules and rituals to worship by. Now, I'm not speaking about this church, MCC Greater Dallas, because I know y'all don't do that. I'm talking about those churches out there. Those churches who have certain symbols which are sacred and cannot be touched. Those churches who have proclaimed that there is only one right way to worship. And of course, it's theirs. It is at 9:30 on Sunday morning. The choir will sing only 2 songs, A and B selection. They will have only one offering. They will pray in silence, and Sister Amen will not say a word. The preacher will only speak for 30 minutes. Service will end promptly at 10:30. There's no deviation from this service, no matter what happens. Those churches are unaccepting of people who are different from them. My childhood church was just one of those churches. I remember growing up, we had a dress code for Sunday morning. This dress code was strictly adhered to. If you came to church in anything else that was unacceptable, you were made to feel very, very, very uncomfortable. Well, years went by, and at St. Luke Baptist Church, we got a new pastor. The dress code was still in effect. It was still being enforced. But this particular Sunday, some young women came into our church, in our sanctuary, and they were wearing pants. So I don't know how many of you remember when people started wearing pants. Women out in public. Women people. So you can guess that there was a big uproar about these young women wearing pants in St. Luke Baptist Church. So one Sunday morning, the pastor stood up in the pulpit. He looked at the young women and said, I don't care what they wear. He cared about what was in their hearts. We were a church of rules, rituals, and regulations. But on that day, even though our Christianity could be considered narrow, on that day, we expanded it a little bit. We still had excluded other things, but that day, women of all ages could wear pants. On that day, people from every walks of life could wear what they wanted to wear, because God is accepting of where you are and what you wear. So what if our Christianity is based on love? Can it be narrow? I think not. For if we love, we have it for everyone. We have it for our family, our close friends, our neighbors, even our enemies. We love because God loved us first. We love because the Christ in Christianity gave up his life and conquered death so we could live. We love because the greatest two commandments hold us accountable to love God and love each other. We love because love is the most powerful force on earth. We love because that is what the world needs. We love just because. And just because we love. So in closing, Jesus' words about the way of life, love, and righteousness were spoken long time ago, during a time and in a culture that was very different from ours. And the details of how people have practiced their faith in centuries past may look quite different from how Christians do it now. But the deeper truth, the larger story of the Bible has remained the same and is relevant to all people. We have many choices, from the products we buy, the time we spend at various religious options of this pluralistic society. There are good qualities of our modern culture. And so there is one invitation that continues to beckon us. It is not narrow. It is not exclusive. It is not restricted. Rather, it is simple. It is a simple invitation of Jesus to all who are interested. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And the church said, amen.
So on a day when we look at 47 years of time, one of the things that this church has done so well is to be an inclusive church. One of the first times I ever heard very much about communion in my whole life was in a service at MCC first. But the thing that was the most striking about it then, I think, is the thing that's still striking about it today. And that is that all are welcome at this table. Not every church says that. In the service, the wedding I went to yesterday, the minister had to explain to the group of people that were there, because many of them were from churches and denominations that do not open communion to other people. And it was new news to some people to know you can come and you can be welcome at this table. That's the message, that's the grace that welcomes you and me and has for all these years and helps us establish our lives and to live our lives in the knowledge of that grace, so that we can not be afraid to approach our lives and whatever our circumstances, whatever comes our way, to do that knowing that we're not alone, that we're loved and blessed, and that someone is with us. And that one is the one who took bread and said, in this, find me, see me, know that this is me, that my life is opened for you, and I will be with you. Eat of this bread, and as you do, remember me, because I will feed your life and spirit always. So when you receive this bread, remember the Christ who is there, who is with us always, as he was in that moment. And to further explain, took the cup, gave thanks and blessed, and said, drink from it, all of you, because I am poured out in this cup. I am poured out for you. This is life. This is my essence. This is grace. This is the cup of things to come. So when you drink of it, know, once again, in another way, you have received me and that I'm present with you and I'll be with you. We make this too complicated sometimes. This is simple grape and grain, but by the power of God's presence and spirit, God pours it out on us and here to help us know God, to help us taste the goodness of God. So anytime you come to this table, come seeking, if you don't already feel it, come seeking the presence of God and receive God. So today, once again, as we do every Sunday and have for all these 40-some years, you're welcome to come to this table and know that we have open MCC. Everyone is welcome, members or not. You are all welcome at this table. Join your hands and hearts today with each other and with your brothers and sisters around the world. Come today and taste the goodness of God. Amen.
Thank you for taking the time today to listen to this message. I hope that you heard something that touched you. We want to engage with you, not just send out these sermon videos and let them just be out there somewhere. But we want to engage with you, so I want to invite you to write your comments in the YouTube comment section below the sermon, or come find us on Facebook and share with me your questions, your comments, your insights. Find us at our website, mccgd.org. There's a number of different ways in which you can engage with us from wherever you are, another state, another country, homebound, whatever your situation. Most of all, I want you to know that you are a part of the extended community of this church. You are a part of the family of God. You are a beloved child of God. Thank you for watching.